Bold and Blonde. Welcome to the Mindset Evolution podcast. The podcast to get tools for a powerful mind you can use immediately every day. Get tips, tricks, skills, and inspiration to create what you desire and achieve a content life wherever you are. And here are your hosts, Kathi and Daisy Pup.
And hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Bold and Blonde Mindset Evolution, the podcast that gives you tools for a powerful mind. I'm Kathi Tate, your host from Down Under. With me, as always, your host from America, Daisy Pup. Hi, Daisy.
Hi, Kathi, Down Under. I'm up here, and I'm so much looking forward to recording yet another episode with you. What is up your sleeves?
Well, it's a good one today, Daisy, and it's an old cliche or an old saying is the title, but we are going to get into what that means. The title is You Made Your Bed. Now, the saying has another little part to it. The saying goes, you made your bed and now you got to sleep in it.
Oh my goodness, I just had that flashback of a story a client of mine told me. Oh my goodness, yeah, because she was so jealous and her husband was cheating on her. And I don't even know how you call that in English, where they have, it's like a powder, it's like a prank that you can get that when you lay in that, then everything itches. And she didn't know who was the cheatee. So the husband cheated and she didn't know who was cheated with. And then the next day, her girlfriend told her that she's itching everywhere. And so that's the end of the story. That's the first thing that came to my mind. Oh my God.
I think certainly involved a bed.
Yeah, well, and I think it's a good idea to have a look at the bed at first and also who you share it with. Oh my goodness. I don't even know how that just crossed my mind. But tell me, what would you like this episode to go towards? Because you made up your mind. I know when you chose this title. So what's up your mind?
Well, I like to explore these old cliches because I really believe that the majority of them have a grain of truth in there, or some little bit of wisdom that's handed down and wrapped up in this saying.
Yeah.
And I think that they're handed down and they persist for a reason. Now, to explain to all of our listeners what this one means, you made your bed and now you must sleep in it, or actually lie in it, is the original saying, I believe. It means that there are consequences to your actions, basically. Very short explanation that there are always consequences. Now, this is a really important point for me because I taught my son very early that there were always consequences, because I think that if you're going to teach somebody responsibility and you're going to teach them that how they act matters, then you have to also teach that there are consequences. And I think that's important in someone's growth, whether they're a child or an adult. It is important that we all understand that our actions have consequences on those around us, on events that are happening, on what tomorrow could be like.
And on ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And we need to take responsibility for those consequences because they're a result of our choices.
Now you got it.
Now, when you're stuck in victimhood, you don't take that responsibility. You push the blame out and around and anywhere but yourself. And sure, maybe others have a part to play in the consequences that you may be living through. But I firmly believe there is always some sort of choice that we ourselves make, and therefore we have to take responsibility for the consequences. Now, you guys who've been listening to us for a while know that both Daisy and I have had pasts that have had trauma and circumstances that are sometimes out of our control, but we've also made choices within those circumstances that have put us on different paths. And we have learnt to take responsibility for those choices and therefore the consequences as well. And I think it's a really important part of being your best version is to accept that this is a thing and that we can't slip into victimhood and not take this responsibility. And if nothing else, taking responsibility empowers you because you've then got some control. Like you did make choices, you did cause events in some way to happen, and you are responsible for that. Now, if you give your power away and be a victim, then you're saying that everything happens and you had no say in it. And I don't know that that's ever true. What do you think, Daisy?
I find it so interesting to listen to what you're saying. And I find it even more interesting to see that you and I have a different cultural background. And therefore, the meaning of the saying has a different meaning to you as it has to me. Because to me, how I grew up and where I grew up, the meaning was solely related to relationships. You made your bed and now sleep in it. And I find it extremely interesting that I have not heard it when it came to a job, or when it came to you bought a house and now you don't like the neighborhood, or you bought a boat and you don't like the water anymore, or you bought a car and then you realized, oh my goodness, this is really not a good suit for me. I find that very interesting. And now let's have a look at solely the relationship first, and then we go to all the long lists that you just mentioned. Because for me, that's more familiar. I'd like to start with that. Let's say I'm in a relationship, and I've been, that I came to the realization that I don't like it. I either don't like it anymore, or I come to the conclusion that I didn't like it from the get-go. Now, when I choose a partner, ladies out there, drum roll, Kathi would say, most of the time, a lady chooses the partner.
Well, in some form, I'd say yes.
Okay, we can discuss that in a salon talk or in private. That's a different discussion, not on this platform, I think. Now, when I choose my partner and I say, yeah, that's it, I let you in, literally and physically alike, then it's my choice. Meaning, when then later on I realize that, oh, I made a mistake because the guy is not a good suit to me, neither mentally, nor emotionally, nor financially, not physically, not sexually, not emotionally, and so forth, then it's so easy to blame him that he is not the object of my desire as I envisioned him or her. Blame them instead of blaming me, or realizing, okay, maybe it's my expectations. One, maybe I have still false childhood beliefs active that I have not outgrown yet. Maybe I still believe in the fairy tale that everything is going to happen well for me without my doing, not the wrongdoing. And then in addition to that, it is so easy to blame, because that is what you just mentioned, that then I'm in the victimhood. I am the victim. Poor me. And then there's the consequence that then I'm still trying to even more change the object of my desire once back. Then I become the nagging one, and everyone I'm nagging sooner or later surely tries to escape. Now, when they escape, then I feel even more victimized. So it's just a downward spiral. So it goes back to the responsibility and it goes back to actions. And I really like how you mentioned the other examples. And I think it's a good idea to go through them one by one.
Okay.
She just agrees.
First, I want to say it's very interesting that your perspective from your upbringing is that it's related to relationships. Maybe that's because there's a bed in there. And I wonder within our audience in 94 countries, how many variations of this saying there are, because there's probably hundreds in other languages and cultures, and that's super interesting. Whereas in my culture or my upbringing, it was just applied blanket. The saying could apply to any situation. It wasn't limited to relationships. So that's very interesting. Now, you want to go through each example one by one?
As you wish.
Did you write them down?
I did not write them down. Do you remember what you said?
No.
Oh, she disappeared from the screen. She just escaped.
Sorry. I forgot we're recording video.
Well, you mentioned the job, you mentioned the decisions, you mentioned that there are consequences to actions and how important and how ferocious you see it now in your adult son, that it was so well for him that he was introduced to the concept that he has decisions, he's free to choose, and then there are consequences. I think maybe that as a concept is important to put out.
Yeah. Now, so I'll tell you where that came from too. I had a friend who had older children, and she was a very good friend, a long-term friend. I think we'd been friends for over 10 years. And Christopher was, I'm going to say about 6 or 8, somewhere around there. So fairly young, under 10. And her children were probably 7 or 8 years older. So they were nearing teenagehood at the time. And I really respected this friend. I thought that she had great morals, great ideas, that she was also a single parent and doing a really good job at raising her children. But there was one fundamental issue that I disagreed on, and it was this, because she did not believe that children should have consequences. She believed that they were children and therefore were exempt because they were learning, whereas I was the opposite. I believe that the concept of having consequences to your actions is absolutely essential to understanding how you fit into a situation and then into what happens next, and how your actions are part of that. So I wanted to make sure that I taught my child that if he did something or said something, then he did play a part in what happened next, because it was a consequence of something he did or said. And it came to an obvious point. He used to study karate for quite a long time. He did karate for about 5 or 6 years when he was very young. And he at one point decided that he didn't want to do it anymore. And he was still quite young. It was around the same age, the same time period. I think he may have been around 7 or 8. And so he'd been doing it since he was started school, very small. And I'd done that, 1, to teach him discipline, and 2, so he had a male role model in his life, which was his sensei. And he did like it, but I think it did have a bit to do with my closest friend and her son, and he may have been getting bullied by this kid who was actually quite a natural at karate, and it was a whole dynamic. Anyway, my son decided he didn't want to do it anymore, and he was still quite young. And I respected that he had his reasons for that. And even though we'd invested all this time and energy into years of this sport for his benefit, I respected that he was making a choice that he didn't want to partake in it anymore. And I remember very clearly his sensei rubbishing me and going, he's too young to make his own decisions. He can't do that. And I said, well, you're wrong. I've brought him up to make his own decisions since 5 years old in a gentle, easy way as you teach your children. I started with choices of 1 or 2 things and he got to choose. And then eventually that led into him actually being able to think for himself, make his own choices and understand that if he chose that, then this would happen. Or if you choose that, then this will happen. And that was how I taught him. And so it was this fundamental difference in opinion of this very issue that really stuck out. And it's so many years later, goodness, it was probably 20 years ago. And it's something I remember like it was yesterday because it was so important to me. And clearly I have that belief because I was brought up that way. This saying was quite common in my family. And you didn't get to wriggle out from any of your consequences. You always had to take responsibility, full stop. And that was how it was. So that also taught me, in a way, to not be a victim to my own choices, to not give my power away. If I choose, then I also choose the consequences. Whether I thought them up before and knew what they were going to be or not didn't matter, because consequences can often be unexpected.
Yeah.
But it was something that was really important in our culture growing up. And so I passed that on to my child. And I do believe that served him well because if children don't have consequences, then why would they take responsibility for their actions? And then if we have a world of people that aren't taking responsibility for their actions, what kind of world have we got?
I think we're maybe missing one part here, and maybe that is the insight from the consequences. Because consequences themselves, I think, are not enough to support our growth. I understand we're recording podcast here, but I think I'm going to share something here. I translated it and it says, don't judge people because you don't know the troubles they go through. Consequences. So consequences, how you make your bed, the consequences are irrelevant at the end. I believe it's more important what we learn from them.
I don't think they're irrelevant, but I think that what we learn from what we just experienced matters. And so they can't be taken in isolation. So the consequences matter, but also the insight matters just as much. And I think they're like a set.
Yeah, like sister and brother.
You've got responsibility, you've got consequences, and you've also got the insight, and they all go together and we need to use them together.
I think the result, the desired outcome is the learning experience, the insight. If anyone in that video would have come, and we will put it under the description of this podcast episode, we put the link in there so people can watch the video that we are speaking about here.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Daisy just showed me a video and we will put a link down below in it. And it is quite heart-wrenching, the little video, but it does point out a really important fact. So go on, Daisy.
What I learned, I don't have the research complete yet, but what I learned that the production of the video took 30 minutes and it won an Oscar for short films. I'm still waiting for some feedback from Kosovo, where the language at the end of the video stems from. So I'm still waiting for some feedback. The consequences, I think, are the bridge to learning and gaining insight. So I think after me seeing this video earlier this morning, because the consequences themselves without the learning experience may be considered a punishment.
Well, they certainly feel like that sometimes.
I agree. Now, but when we can shift from experiencing it as a punishment and rather see it as an invitation to learn and grow and evolve, I believe that we, and I think so clearly, that we arrive at the other end much faster. And we will not need to be delivered the same and same over and over again as consequences, because the over and over comes only when we don't learn from it. So the consequence itself is not completing the task.
Yeah, I agree with that. So what we're saying is that, to go back to the title of our episode, you've made your bed, now you must lie in it, is the full English saying that I grew up with. We're saying that means that you need to take responsibility for your actions, the consequences that follow, and then also look at those consequences. Whereas the lesson for us within that.
That's it.
I love it.
That's how it feels round to me.
Yeah.
Instead of victimizing ourselves, was I a victim oftentimes in my life? I certainly was. I was the victim of certain things that happened in my life without me adding to victimize myself. Nevertheless, when there are humans who have the tendency to see themselves as victims as a pattern, seek the solution in other people's changes or circumstances changing, the lesson is still so far away and the consequences are there in front of their nose. I'd like to inspire to have a look, okay, what may be the lesson in this? And I believe in language, and I believe in a subtle, gentle way how language is giving us hints. And when I say the word responsibility, ability, my ability, how I respond to circumstances, my ability, how I respond to the choices I made. When I take full responsibility, let's say, Kathi, I'm making this up, but let's say I 5 minutes ago realized that well, the day when you found me and we decided we were going to produce the show together was the best decision of my life. But 5 minutes ago, I decided it was the worst decision of my life. I'm just making this up. Then it is me who only can take the full responsibility. So I am the one who is being asked, how am I able to respond to my new thinking, my new finding, my new feelings, my new emotions? People change, life changes. What do I do with it? So the consequence, when we now go back to a different aspect, let's say how we raise our children, and then we utilize consequences as punishment, it fails the purpose of the lesson, because the learning is the fruit we're looking for, the natural consequence.
I think that's a really good point, because I say that this has been throughout my life and my upbringing and my culture, but we were taught that consequences were often punishment, especially if something, perhaps as a child, we did something that had negative consequences because we didn't really know what we were doing. And it's quite common in the Old English culture to have punishment at a forefront rather than a learning experience. So I think that's a good point. I also really love how you break down the word responsibility into ability to respond. And I think that's extremely important point, because often we make choices or decisions or things happen around us within life. And I know it doesn't always feel like we have choices. It often feels like things are happening to us and we can feel a certain amount of helplessness amongst that. And we take our power back with our ability to respond.
There
that
you
is
go.
exactly how we take our power back.
That's exactly.
With that one piece of the puzzle right there.
Yeah.
That is the most important thing of this whole episode, is that no matter how it's happening, what is happening, how helpless you feel, you do always have control over your own ability to respond.
Yeah. We spoke about in past episodes, maybe you remember the number or the title because you're the one who's responsible for it. Now, when we think about a lesson, when we look for the lesson to be learned, when we look for the task that can be accomplished, when we look for, okay, in my own evolution, individually, subjectively, what is it that's my calling? What is it that's to be learned right now? Or what is it that is offered to me that I can acquire knowledge of or insight, looking inside? The word is just beautiful, the language. Which boot camp are you in right now? Instead of looking at the consequences, what is it that I'm about to learn here? Like when I'm standing in line physically in a store, or when I'm on hold on the phone, and it's really getting on my nerves because some companies are really, to me, it appears like in a competition for the worst sound and the worst music choices that's possible available on this earth. Nevertheless, then I think to myself, oh, is it now a punishment? No, I consider it, okay, wow, I'm in a boot camp of patience right now. Or I'm here right now to not get aggravated. Or I'm learning now, so I'm looking at the consequence, even when it is outside of my own willing and wanting and doing, because it's not my decision. Maybe one day I will be the decision maker of the music choices that will be allowed to be played in the background for an hour and a half, let's say, when you're waiting on hold on the phone. What is it that I can learn here? I do believe when I offer myself to the circumstance by going into it willingly and say, I'm ready, I'm open to learning, what's the lesson? Then I will not consider it as a punishing / consequence anymore. So again, it goes back, maybe now you remember the episode. We can make a contest. Who remembers this episode? Attitude. It's my attitude. Who is in power of my attitude? I am. Where is it empowering? Here, within me, I'm empowering myself. That's my responsibility, my ability to learn how to respond to outer circumstances that appear that I cannot change. There are circumstances I cannot change. When there's full moon, there's full moon. When there's high tide, there's high tide. When there comes a storm, there's a storm. I cannot change these, but I can choose how I'm responding to it. My ability to respond. And when we notice that, then I will be much more conscious, not cautious, but conscious about what bed I'm making when it comes to relationships, when it comes to work, when it comes to my neighborhood, when it comes to the choice of my car, when it comes to the choice of the studies I'm interested in, and so forth. And then we are fully responsible, because that is actually, I believe, one of the greatest tasks here during lifetime on Earth, that we become responsible, able to respond.
Yeah, I think this is really important too for parents out there who are teaching their children about this, because like I mentioned, we were often brought up that the consequences were punishment. And perhaps that was a manipulation of our elders, that if you choose this and the consequences will be nice, and if you choose that, they're going to be bad. That certainly goes on. So I think that's a really good point. And I think that the attitude of what am I learning here? Where is the lesson? How can I understand better? How can I respond better? How can I be affected less by negative things around me that may be happening? Certainly, being on the phone for an hour is not new in Australia either. And ironically, it's usually when you're trying to contact your telecommunications provider. Yes, that terrible hold music. And it is frustrating. But I think I've learned to cope by having something else to do while the phone's sitting on hold, or mitigate the consequences with my own actions somehow. But at the end of the day, you're right. It is all a learning experience. It is the way we look at things. And yes, we certainly did do an episode on attitude. It was 133.
There you go. Bravo, bravo.
You don't need the number though, guys. Just go to baldandblonde.live, search attitude in the search box, and it will pop up. And I think that it is probably one of our most important episodes, and certainly can absolutely change your experience of your life, your attitude.
Absolutely.
The way you look at things and respond to things makes all the difference in the world to how you feel yourself, your interaction with others around you, and then how the consequences roll out. There are going to be consequences. It's like the saying, there are two certainties in life: death and taxes. Well, actually, I'm going to say death and consequences. Bugger taxes. That's a man-made thing. Two certainties, and the fact that their life is one giant uncertainty. And the only piece of control we really have is this. How do we respond to it?
Responsibility.
And that is completely up to us. Yes. I love it.
I also think that it is a good idea to add that our attitude is not only a great compass, but when it leads to understanding. I have that love to words and love for words, and I like the play around words. Understanding a lesson, understanding those who are watching us via video, understanding I can stand under it. I stand under it, meaning I can carry it, meaning that is when it's no longer breaking me, torturing me, it's too heavy, it's making me small. But when I can understand it, I can carry it. And I can still walk with a straight spine and my head up, chin up, however you want to consider, then that is understanding. I got it. And then the fear disappears in addition to that, because no longer do I fear when I'm going to be another hour on the phone, on hold, listening to horrible sound quality and horrible sound choices or music choices to my taste. When I already pick up the phone, oh no, and now I need to be on the hold again because I'm calling my phone company or the insurance company or a list of companies in this competition of the worst sound and wait times, then it depends on my attitude how I'm going to experience that. And why would I set myself up, making your bed and then you lay in it? Why would I do that to myself that I'm already picking up the phone and then I'm getting angry at that phone. And then my attitude will be like, this human on the other end, it's not their responsibility. It's not their fault how long I was on hold in line. They do their job. They make a living. Why would I then have them feel the consequences of me being upset because I was on hold, because I cannot handle my responsibility of being able to respond to circumstances that are out of my control? And one last thing, the bed. You made your bed and you must lay in it. I disagree. If the bed is uncomfortable, get out.
I'm not sure that we can just change a centuries-old saying. Whatever, sure.
I'm not changing the saying. I'm changing the attitude towards the saying. Because when I believe that sentence to be true or that saying to be true, it puts me in a certain mood. Meaning, okay, so I choose now I'm studying law and now I must be a lawyer for the rest of my life. Bull manure. Because I can change my choice and I can choose in the meantime. Okay, I wanted to be an attorney or study law at that point in time. I 100% agree that was my choice then. And today I found the love for food and now I'm going to be a food composer. I found my love for music and I'm going to be a composer for film music or for anything else. Or I'm doing sound architecture for projects. Hint, hint. Or I'm going to change my attitude toward my work life because I choose that I'm going to be a baker doesn't mean and doesn't condemn me to be the baker for the rest of my life. If your bed that you laid in is no longer comfortable, get out, make yourself another bed. And look at the lesson. When you get the lesson and you find the insight inside, you're good to go.
Yeah, 100%. I do agree with that. And so I think that you can definitely look at this in two ways. And well, I think that you probably need to look at this in two ways. One, that we have to take responsibility for our actions and the consequences and find the lesson in it. But two, that is not to limit us. We get to still choose.
Yes.
We still get to choose, is that the bed I want tomorrow? Or do I want a new bed?
Yes.
Because that's what life is about. It's about making choices for things that you want for yourself. And ultimately, that's up to us. Now, I understand that sometimes we can get stuck in circumstances and it can feel like things are outside of our control. But I would argue that there's always little choices. There are always little ways to take control back. And the key in that is the responsibility, the ability to respond. That is always within our control. And here's another old one, where there's a will, there's a way. I believe that if you want something bad enough, you want it strongly enough, you believe in it enough, then you find a way. That is my self-belief, that we have that power within ourselves and we just need to release our victimhood thinking in order to take that control back. And this is the first step. And it is not hard. It is just a matter of attitude and tweaking the way we look at things. And I do believe that the attitude episode will help you with that. And in fact, I do believe that every episode we do helps with that. So I really hope to all you new listeners out there that you go back and you listen to all of our episodes, because I think that every single one has a bit of a golden nugget to share. And people say to us, how can you just keep coming up with these topics? Aren't you going to run out? And we're like, I don't think we're going to run out until we die, because mindset is everything and it is everywhere. In every single part of our life, our mindset matters. And the more that you have control over that, and the more that you consider your ability to respond rather than react, the more power you have within yourself. And I can tell you for a fact, guys, that the last 2.5 years of doing this recording has changed me for the better. Hands down, without a doubt. And I came into this thinking that I knew what I was doing. And I have learned so much in this process.
Yeah.
That's how I know that it will help you guys out there too, because it's helped me.
I'd like to circle back for maybe 2 minutes or 2 minutes back when I heard you say, if I remember correctly, that when you want it strongly enough, that then you can be it or you can have it. I'd like to limit that. You may not like my response to that. That's how I think. Yes, I agree. Only when it does not involve other people. Why? Other people are not under my control. The moment I want to put other people under my control, it's forceful, no natural growth possible, period. You can choose natural growth or force, and then there will be consequences. So let's say I want to create the best podcast I can possibly do. And I link it to somebody, let's say over 3 years ago, when you found me, miraculously. Thank you, dear Kathi, for the rest of my life for that. That let's say I wanted to do it with somebody from Europe, then I would have consequentially said no to you. Why would I do that? No, if for example, I want to be able to produce a great podcast with great banter, with great content, great context, mindfulness, philosophical, with knowledge, where we can grow ourselves and others can grow consequentially through our growth and the thinking processes that we offer. But when I limit myself, but I want it with this and this one only, I'm limiting myself. And what is the lesson then to be learned in that? When, let's say, I want to be friends with my neighbors, and let's say my neighbors just suffer assholitis, which is luckily not the case. But let's say it was the case. Then do you really believe that they're going to change because I want to have a great relationship with my neighbors? They're not. I can change my neighborhood by moving away or moving on. So we can be a lot and we can do a lot, but I'd limit it to what is in my power, because otherwise I set myself again up for the circle and the spiral downwards of victimhood. I wanted to make that clear.
Sure, I absolutely agree with that. I meant it from that perspective, from the individual perspective, but it's good that you clarify for our audience. I actually think this has been a bonza episode, Daisy, and it's been a bit of an extra long one too, so bonus time for you guys. Please do make sure you watch that little video. It will touch you, and it's certainly important in this conversation. That's it from us today. Please visit us at boldandblonde.live. Go and listen to our early episodes. Contact us. Tell us what you think. Tell us what you feel. Tell us your experiences. Tell us your topic ideas. We're open to everything. And while you're there, please support us. We would love your contribution to help us stay ad-free. That's it from us this week. We'll be back next week with another awesome topic. We are Bold and Blonde.
Mindset Evolution. Talk to you next time. Thank you for listening in to the Bold and Blonde Mindset Evolution podcast. Please share our podcast with your family and friends. Together, we make this world a better place. For you, for us, for future generations. Visit us at boldandblonde.live to get freebies, give feedback, and even support us with as little as $1. Talk to you soon.